How was year 11 for you? Was it something that at the start of year 11 were you worried, anxious, chilled out? Like, how were you feeling at the start of the year 11 journey about year 11?
I felt kind of excited, and like I was really excited just to study subjects that I was really interested in. I was mostly feeling like unprepared, but you realise when you get into year 11 that it's just a whole different thing to what you're expecting.
So you came in feeling like you were prepared, and then discovered that you weren't? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, kind of, because you figure out when you get into year 11 that what is required is so different to junior years in terms of what teachers expect, how much work you put into assignments and such, when you can kind of cruise through like year 7 to 10, maybe when you put in work you get good grades. Sometimes when you get into year 11 you can put in the work and you don't get the good grades, and that was a bit of a shock. But once you like recover from that and keep working,
you start to learn, right? Okay, what did I do wrong here? And so I guess what I'm hearing as a maybe discovery that you made during year 11 is that hard work doesn't always equal good results. As annoying as that is, right? Like you would expect, and I think you're right, 7 to 10, that's sort of the formula, isn't it? Like you work hard and the results flow. And I think definitely, it's very much then about, like working smart as well, I think. So what subjects did you do in year 11?
I did Music 1, Studies of Religion 1, Beginner's Spanish by Distance, Modern History, Legal Studies, Advanced Math, Advanced English.
That sounds like a lot of subjects. How many units was that?
13 units.
Okay, wow, 13. So how did you balance those? I mean, that sounds like a lot of work.
I had to make sure that I made sure I got homework done, having a system of organisation, writing down every piece of homework you get as soon as you hear it in class so you don't forget about it, and making sure to have planners and knowing I had to get all of my assignments done a week before the due date so I could always get feedback, and trying to keep on top of it.
That's great. So I guess a question then is, throughout the year, you sort of started with the Pathfinder program, which has been amazing. And one of the things that you were doing with that was working with Winnie, your mentor. What were sessions like working with Winnie? Like, what did you typically do? What were the sorts of things that you sort of talked about?
It was mostly about like organisation and how to stay on top of work, because I knew I had all of my work and I was putting in time, but it was really about focusing on getting that time to be as productive as possible, and making it work for me for each of my subjects, so that the time that I was putting into studying was actually correlating in improvement.
Amazing. So it sounds like there were sort of two things that were happening. One was like a big picture, like study planning, organisation component. And then it sounds like the other thing was then also like subject specific. Like, okay, for this subject, like I could do this or I could do this. Which one's going to be better for me, essentially? So what were some of the things that you really took out and implemented from the mentoring sessions with Winnie?
Definitely what I was actually doing in my subjects. So like, for example, in English, I learnt writing summary notes on the text story wasn't as important as like analysing quotes and making sure to really target my study to what was actually going to help me in the end. And also about taking like feedback and results that I'd gotten from school and how to actually improve those and push myself to the next level.
Awesome. So it sounds like using feedback, actually using it, right? Because we tend to want to avoid it and not look at it when we get it. So that's fantastic. What was one of the best things about working with Winnie?
Staying accountable. So having the it was usually every 2 to 3 week sessions, really kept me like, it wasn't like, oh, there's this, I did this one thing and, you hold on to it for like a week or so and then you forget about it. Having the kind of repeated sessions really kept me like, I have to keep doing this so that when she asks me, I can say, yes, I did that.
Awesome. Accountability is a powerful thing. That is so great. And then, one of the things that you were highlighting was, obviously that you were trying to go into subject-specific strategies. What was the subject that you had the most sort of challenges with over the course of year 11?
I had the most challenges with advanced math, and that was mostly about, I knew what I had to do to get better at math, which was basically just practice. And what I really had to do, what we kind of worked on, was not getting stressed out about math, because that was probably the main thing holding me back, was thinking too much about it. I just had to like go through practice, and when I get something wrong, don't be like, oh my gosh, I'm no good at math, but like actually just like, I can do it, and just work through it. And the other thing was my writing in legal studies and modern history, because I was so shocked at the beginning of those subjects when I was like, oh my goodness, this is totally different to what I did in year 7 to 10 kind of for HSC subjects. And yeah, I put a lot of work into improving my writing in those subjects.
Awesome. And then how did the Pathfinder program, whether or not it was the mentoring, the workshops, the intensives, help with some of the strategies that you could implement for those subjects?
Working on so there was, particularly with English, working on like specific strategies, so like T tables and such. I know I would make a T table, and then maybe like I'd bring it up in class to reference it, and some of my friends would be like, oh my God, that's so smart. And that really helped me in the exam. I really felt prepared when going into my year 11 exams. I did really well compared to how I'd done in my assessments, because I felt like I knew what strategies to do while studying.
Awesome. So because you'd been able to test almost the strategies with your assessments during the year, it sounds like by the time you got to the end of your 11 exams, you're like, I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Hopefully. Awesome. Before we talk about exam prep and the end of your 11 exams, because that's something I do want to dive into, diving back for a moment, start of year 11, or as the early months went on, what would you say was your biggest challenge in navigating year 11?
Biggest challenge at the start was, because I knew at the beginning of year 11 that the advice was you should do study notes all year. But a big challenge at the start was doing those study notes then on top of all these assignments that were so much more complicated than I had originally thought they would be, and took so much more time. That was probably the biggest challenge. And then I realised when I got to the end of year 11 and I went back to these study notes I'd made in term 1, that I was actually no good at making study notes, which sounds like a waste of time, but in the end it actually helped me, rather than spending that time towards year 11, towards the exams, like figuring out how to make study notes. I'd already kind of figured out what didn't work, and I was able to just go straight into what did work. Positive way to look at it. Yeah.
And so what was it that didn't work with those study notes, and what did you do differently, and was that things that, you know, that Pathfinders had sort of taught you on how to structure your study notes more effectively?
Yeah, partially, because I had done research into the strategies of study notes before year 11, but there's just like so much information about it. Like, do you type your notes? Do you handwrite your notes? Do you do lots of pictures? Do you make them more in depth? Do you not? And you can take in all this information, but until you actually start making your own notes and figuring out what actually works for you, you don't really get you don't really understand it. So by the time I was at the end of year 11, I figured out just typing notes in blocks didn't work for me, and I really had to, because I wanted to type my notes to make it more efficient and quicker, because I knew that like just handwriting didn't actually help it go into my brain. But what I realized is I needed them to be more visual and be like more mind map forms and kind of arrows and such, which you can't do as well typing your notes. So that's something I had to figure out for myself. There was no video that was going to tell me that, but I needed to do my research to find out what all the options were.
So it sounds like what's really critical, because study notes is something that a lot of students procrastinate on.
Yeah.
They don't do in year 11, if we're being really honest. And, you know, so in year 12.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because what I'm really hearing is the importance of why you want to start them in year 11. Not even because you may use them, but because you work out what works for you, so that when you actually really need them in year 12, you know what you're doing, right? As opposed to then starting study notes in year 12 and then getting to the end of year 12 and then going, oh, wow, well, that didn't work.
Yeah.
Not a good outcome to have happen.
Yeah.
So let's talk about end of year 11 exams now, because one of the things I'm mindful of is that it can be probably one of the biggest sources of stress in year 11. Yeah. It's the first time you're sort of sitting, full year reviews, you're expected to know the entire year's worth of material. It's the first time you've got like a 2-week official exam block. For most schools. Some schools do it early, but for most. And so there's a whole lot of new things going on here in terms of just like exams. How did you feel going into your exam, your end of year 11 exams?
Well, at like the end of term 3, like beginning of, term 3, end of term 2, beginning of term 3, when all our assignments had been completed, I felt kind of excited almost. I was like, wow, I can just like actually just learn the material. I don't have to like formulate responses to specific questions. So I was kind of like nearly excited, but not really. I was nervous for my math exam because we'd only done one like exam type thing in math, and that was in remote learning, and the whole class did very poorly. It was our very first assessment, and then the next one was more of a research task, and I did well in that. So I had no idea because I felt like I was behind in content. But in the end, I had to just not stress out about my year 11 exams. I did like have like pressure on myself to do well, like for early entries and such, but I was just like, I'm just going to go see how I do and give it my best shot.
And so then, what were you doing, like, whether or not it was Winnie or the intensives or the workshops that we were running as part of the Pathfinder program, like how did they come together to help you plan for your exams?
They helped me with my time management. So, and also what to actually do. I knew that when preparing for my exams, I shouldn't be spending my time reading my study notes. And I knew that I had to I kind of took that time to study. I made more study notes out of the study notes that I already had that actually broke down the information.
It was like a summary of a summary.
Yeah, and making sure to like work on things to actually memorize what information I needed to, rather than like working on like knowing that active recall was very important in studying. So working on my writing and working on making sure I could recall information under pressure, which in the end I think is what separated my results from other people who spent maybe just as much time studying but didn't get as good results.
So it sounds like what happened then for you over the course of year 11 is that you went from working hard and not getting results that you were perhaps wanting, right, to working just as hard but a little smarter. And because you were sort of changing up the sort of way in which you were sort of studying for some of your subjects and then getting better results. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, that's pretty much how it worked.
Yeah, amazing. And what did you take out of? I mean, I know we've talked a little bit about the mentoring sessions that you had as part of Pathfinder with Winnie, your mentor. What did you take out of the workshops that we're sort of running, about once a month?
I really enjoyed those because about hearing how other students studied who were in different places, different schools, different situations, and how we all kind of related in different ways. That was really interesting for me. Because I'm in a very small school with not a lot of people who are very academically motivated. So it was good to hear how other people did things and help kind of motivate me in a way. And I also really took a lot from the strategies that we went over and the kind of reflecting on how I'd done previously to make new strategies.
And I think you're right, depending on what school you're at. I think regardless of that, I think often just connecting with other people from other schools just gives you more perspective, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Either that actually I'm doing pretty well and I'm being really hard on myself, or the opposite, like, ooh, I've been slacking a little. I should probably put a little bit more work in. So that's fantastic. And we also do the sort of full day intensives, right? So they were sort of the longer deep dives as opposed to the monthly workshops. And they tended to be in the school holidays, like preparing for the coming term. What was your was there a particular thing that stuck with you from one of the intensives?
Like one of them in particular, doing a wall chart at the beginning of my preparing for exam term, that was useful because I had this whole list of things that I needed to do, and then I realized I have a whole term ahead of me and I only had to do a few things each week. And it prepared at the very, going into my exams, I was like, I feel like I haven't done a lot, but really I had spread it out because I'd done the preparing in the holidays. I had spread it out so much that I'd kind of forgotten that I'd done the work, but I had. So
amazing.
Yeah.
So in other words, it was just consistent work. The wall charting is an exercise, which is a big thing that we spend a fair bit of time, teaching. it sounds like what it really did was just, take what was, not to say that you do this, but let's say take what normally is cramming over like the 3 or 2 weeks before an exam period and really meant that you were hitting milestones much more consistently. So, I mean, I imagine that meant that you were a lot less stressed going into your exams as well.
I mean, I feel like stress is inevitable for exams, but because whenever everyone else around you is like stressed for their exams, you just feel like it kind of resonates. But then I realized,
by osmosis, right? I'm stressed.
But then I realized that I was prepared and I'd done the work that I needed to do, which was different from the work that other people had done. And sometimes seeing what other people, like I figured out that group studying right before an exam is not a good way to study, because you just see what everyone else is doing and you compare that to yourself. And that is not good for self-confidence. I figured that I think going into year 12, I have to kind of separate myself a bit before exams and realize that any study you do the day of your exam isn't actually going to help you.
Probably already in trouble by then.
Yeah.
If you were to give some advice about preparing for other year 11 students, about preparing for their end of year 11 exams, what advice would you give them?
For the end of year exams, I'd say try out as many different strategies as you can so that when you get your results back, you can see whether it actually worked for you or not. Don't go in with just one thing because you don't know whether there's other. Just try a broad range of things. Even if you think you know, just give some other things a try.
So it sounds like what I'm hearing, which is I think really quite smart, is test stuff in year 11 so you're ready for year 12.
Yeah.
Because yes, while year 11 results can have an impact on early entry and scholarship, ultimately beyond that it doesn't count for anything.
Yeah.
So if you can test some things, I think you're right. It's a great opportunity to be like, all right, I now know what I need to do for my year 12 where it matters. Digging into this a little bit more, stepping back, what tips would you provide, like 3 tips for students that are starting year 11, right, on the 3, if they only do 3 things, the 3 big things they should do to ensure that they have the most successful year 11 for them? Don't
get discouraged at the start of year 11 when your grades are a lot lower than they were in year 10, because that's just how it is. It's just so different. It's something you have to get used to. Don't get discouraged at all. Try out a lot of different study techniques so that you figure out what works for you and implement as much feedback as you possibly can from your teachers in your assignments. If you get even if you have an assignment back and you can't get it remarked, just even rewrite a paragraph and hand it back and really work on, because the content in year 11 for most subjects isn't tested, but what is your skills, so your essay writing and stuff. And if you can really improve that throughout year 11, you'll be set up well for the beginning of year 12.
That's great. And why is feedback so important? It's something that you've touched upon, a couple of times. Why is it so important to receive?
Because if you don't, you plateau. If I hadn't have implemented feedback that I got in my essay writing, I wouldn't, because in year 7 to 10, writing is just, they have to break it down simply so that everyone can do it. But in year 11 and 12, it's really about trying to prepare you more for university in a way. So feedback is important because it's a completely new skill, and without feedback, you can't get better.
Now, what's the number one habit you've changed in year 11 that's had the biggest impact on your life and results during the year?
Biggest habit, separating my study space from my relaxing space. It was simple, but just making sure that when I was studying, not doing other things and watching a YouTube video and half working, which actually worked in year 10. I could use it to motivate me and I didn't have to fully commit to, but in year 11, I figured I have to have my desk just for studying and making sure that I was actually fully engaged in what I was doing. Otherwise, the work just isn't your best work.
And a couple of final questions. The Pathfinder program has sort of 3 big objectives: to help students lift results, find direction, and stand out. How has the Pathfinder program over year 11 helped you lift your results?
That's probably been where I've seen the most improvement. I went from getting B's and like probably around C's at the start of year 11, which was a shock to me because I had done quite well in junior years. And it really helped me to like top my class in a lot of my subjects in my exams at the end of the year, which was just really rewarding to see that like when you work hard, you can see the results. So that was, exciting for me to see.
Wow, congratulations. That's really, really cool. That definitely must feel, you're right, very rewarding to know, what, like I put the work in and the results are now happening, which is great. And, I know, each student has a different experience with the Pathfinder program because, it's tailored in the sense of the mentoring sessions and so forth. Has the Pathfinder program helped you at all find any direction for what, thinking about uni and career?
I don't have a set path yet, but it's helped me to kind of expand my options a bit and just making sure that I was prepared fully for whatever I wanted to do. But it did help me to like understand how uni preferences worked and how I could study in different places and I know what my options are now. I just have to figure out where I'm going to go. So, yeah.
Amazing. And I know we might not have got to this part of the program yet based on your Year 11 experience, but I'll ask the question anyway. How did the Pathfinder program help you stand out as well for opportunities?
In terms of opportunities, not sure yet. Because of this year, there aren't that many opportunities anyway.
It's a bit harder, isn't it?
Yeah. But I know that the grades that I've done and also helping to balance doing my schoolwork with extracurricular activities because having time for all of that is a skill in itself. So I'm sure the things that I've done outside of it, as well as the schoolwork, will help me to find things in the
So because it's helped you balance stuff, it's meant that you've maintained things like other commitments and so forth. That's really great. What's been the best thing about the Pathfinder experience in Year 11 for you?
Staying accountable and knowing what I need to do to get better results. Because, it's easy to say when you get a bad result, I just needed to work harder. But if you don't actually know what to do to get that better result, it can be kind of discouraging when you then work harder and you don't get a better result. So it's really helped me to know what to do and to really help balance my time. Is
there any other tips, strategies, comments, anything you want to add or share?
In year 11, don't compare yourself to others. Like it's hard I'm guessing it's harder in year 12 because you are literally ranked against others. But in year 11, make sure focus on what you're doing rather than what other people are doing and how well they're doing. Like particularly for me in math, I kept being like, oh my gosh, I'm so behind in class. Everyone else seems to be like blitzing through this classwork so quickly. But then in the exam, I actually didn't do that badly compared to the rest of the class. And so making sure that, because it's easy to say don't compare yourself to others, but like just know that even though it seems like everyone else might be doing more than you or they might be doing different things than you know what you need to do. So just keep working at it.